Hometown Ghost Stories contains serious and often distressing events and is not intended for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Jerry still couldn't believe it. He had gotten to see the car that James Dean crashed in up close and personal. Not only that, he bought the remaining 2 tires off of it. He had them put on his own Porsche before even leaving the shop. He drove down the road, anxiously waiting to show them off to his friends. As he was looking out the windshield, he thought he saw a shadow out the corner of his vision. He darted his eyes to the side real quick, but there was nothing. He continued down the road, fiddling with the radio in the car a bit. All of a sudden, there was 2 loud pops in rapid succession. Jerry lost control of the car. It started to spin. Everything went black. Jerry woke up standing outside of his mangled upside-down Porsche. Confused, it took a few moments to collect himself. He walked over to the car to assess the wreck. There was something large hanging halfway outside the driver's side window, being crushed. As he got closer, Jerry realized that he was staring at his own body. I'm Rob Coakley, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories. Cursed Possessions, James Dean's car, the little bastard. James Dean was born in Indiana in 1931, and from a young age, he would find his love for the stage and pursue his dream of wanting to be an actor. He would go on to have a brief yet overly impactful career in Hollywood. Actors such as Nicolas Cage, Johnny Depp, and Leonardo DiCaprio would credit James Dean with the inspiration for them wanting to be actors. Now, James had another hobby from childhood that he would pursue after his acting career took off. He also always wanted to be a race car driver. Now, James didn't just dabble in this. It turned out he was pretty good at it. And within entering races, he would quickly come in first or second in a lot of them. Now, the movie studio absolutely hated this, and while filming the movie Giant, they wrote into his contract that he was absolutely forbidden from racing during the filming of the movie. After the movie was complete, James would buy the Porsche 550 Spider that he would go on to call Little Bastard. And he would buy this car on September 21st, 1955. Now, a few short days later, he would meet up with friend and fellow actor Alec Guinness, and this is where the curse of the little bastard would begin. While talking, Guinness recalls saying to James, "Please don't get in that car. If you drive that car, you'll be found dead in it within a week." And unfortunately, this premonition would become true. On September 30th, 1955, James and several others would begin driving to the races that he was going to be participating in a few days. Now, the original plan was to tow the little bastard, but his mechanic decided that James should drive it down so that they could break the engine in and that James would be used to driving the car. While driving down Route 466, which is now known as SR 46, James would get pulled over and receive a speeding ticket. At 5:45, a man named Donald Turnipseed was traveling in the opposite direction of Dean, and he wouldn't see him, and he took a left, and James would hit him head on, and this would cause a major accident. The little bastard would go spinning and flipping, and James sustained severe injuries. There's conflicting reports on whether he died on impact or if he died on the way to the hospital, but a broken neck was among his injuries. This would not be the only life taken associated with the car. Now, after the wreck, the insurance company would declare the car a complete loss, obviously, and it would go on to be sold for parts. The man that would buy this car for parts was William Eskerick, who was also a race car driver. He would go on to put the engine in his own car, and he would sell some of the suspension parts to Troy Lee McHenry, who would use them in his own Porsche. At the 1956 Pomona races, they were entering the same race, and both men would go on to crash. Now, Eskerick would crash his car and luckily survive. McHenry wouldn't be as lucky. McHenry would hit the only tree that was on this particular race course and die. After this, a well-known custom car restorer named George Barris would buy the car and promise to restore it to its original state. Now, this was going to be a little difficult. There wasn't much left other than a badly damaged frame and 4 tires. And while being stored overnight, a fire broke out, engulfing the car in flames and melting 2 of the tires, but somehow not damaging anything else around it. After this, Barris would go on to sell the 2 tires to another man who owned a Porsche. While the man was driving down the road, both tires would blow out at the same time, causing the man to crash and killing him. Now, the car itself would go on tour from 1957 to 1959, entering a lot of car safety expos. During this tour, the car would continuously fall off its stand, one time injuring a bystander by breaking their hip, and more tragically by killing George Barkis, who was the man that was hired to tow, set up, and break down the car from expo to expo. After this, in 1960, on a trip from Miami to Los Angeles, the car would disappear, and many believe that George Barris was behind it, just trying to add a little more credence to the legend. As of now, the only remaining part is that of a transaxle that was found in a wooden crate in Massachusetts. This transaxle will go on to sell for $387,000 at auction. This doesn't quite end the deaths surrounding the car, though. The mechanic that suggested Dean drive the car himself to the races would blame himself for Dean's death. This would cause him to enter a downward spiral of depression and alcoholism. He would unsuccessfully attempt suicide several times, and this would cause strain on marriage after marriage. On May 1st, 1967, he would stab his 4th wife, Doris, to death after yet another unsuccessful attempt at suicide. He would only be found guilty of attempted manslaughter, which is bonkers, and instead of going to prison, he would enter into a mental asylum for just a short stay. In 1981, he would drunkenly crash his car into a house, and the car would have to be cut open to retrieve his body, and he was pronounced dead on the scene, much like James Dean. And currently, that is the curse of the little bastard, but with that part still lingering out there, I wonder if it's truly the end, or if we'll hear more tales going forward.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Hometown Ghost Stories. This was a cursed possession episode that I feel like very well could have also been a celebrity hauntings episode. I'm Jesse Wilkins. I'm joined by Rob Coakley. What's up, Rob?
Yeah, I didn't look too much into the actual ghost of James Dean, just in case we wanted to do a separate one at some point. But I've always known the story of James Dean's car, not extensively like I went into, but I knew there was something behind it, so I kind of wanted to cover this.
Very well done. And then we're also joined by Dave Wilkins. How are you, Dave?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
So now that you break it down like that, I guess I would have to look in and see if James Dean's ghost is supposed to haunt anywhere, but it wouldn't much be a celebrity haunting if he isn't haunting, unless if it's his ghost causing that car to be a cursed item. So I would say cursed item. Without a curse. I mean, it was never really cursed.
This is the Hometown Ghost Stories first celebrity cursed possession. Cursed celebrity possession.
Which is crossing all platforms with this one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a crazy story, like just from beginning to end, and pretty much all of it is documented. The only thing that I couldn't find real documentation on was the 2 tires, and I want to clarify that. I should have said he sold the 2 remaining tires, just so no one confused it with he sold
2 melted tires.
Melted tires.
I guess I thought when I was recording it that people would,
it was
assume.
fairly obvious.
So yeah, anyways, the only story I couldn't find any confirmation on was that particular one, but that is part of every single source that I look through for this. So
that is surprisingly way more deaths than I thought would be tied to this vehicle and the parts that came out of it. I mean, you'd think after the first one, maybe like, no, I don't want these parts from this.
Yeah, that's weird, because when you said there was one part still lingering, I was like, oh, I want it. I want to install it. I want to install it in Rob's computer chair.
Yeah, I don't want it for almost $400,000, which I believe was what it sold for. That was a shocking amount. When you said 387, I was like, $387. That sounds about right. Then you're like 387,000. I was like, whoa.
Yeah,
you're overpaid for that.
It's James Dean, and I know you guys aren't overly familiar with him, but he's one of the first
just cool guys of Hollywood. Like he had this image of just being like this cool young guy that, you know, there was heartthrobs before him, like Rudy Valentino, I think was the one from the 20s, and several others here and there. But
Rob is
James
an
Dean,
expert on the heartthrobs.
Yeah.
well,
So,
I just have a knowledge of cinema history because I watched too many things and documentaries about it. And
it's okay to
Valentino,
say he's handsome. It's fine. He's a handsome guy.
he was handsome. And Valentino's actually a super interesting story to cover for Celebrity Ghost at some point. But yeah, I mean, like James Dean was just like the epitome of cool. So much to the point that when he died, there's like this sort of disrespectful quote, but probably also a true quote, where a fellow actor, and I can't remember who it was like, well, he died at the right time because his legend is never going to be bigger than it is now. If he had lived any longer, he would have cooled off a little bit. He died at the height of his popularity.
Mhm.
And it was going to be hard for him to get any bigger than he already was. And he only had 2 to 3 big movies at the time, which was
he only acted for like 5 years. I think it was like from 1950 to 55.
yeah. And there's 3 movies he's associated with his East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, which are the 2 big ones, and Giant. And I think Giant is mostly known because it was like his last film.
So Giant was the film that they told him that he couldn't race.
Correct.
While filming. So did he stop acting because he was like, well, if I can't race, I'm not going to act? Or did he stop acting because he died?
He didn't stop acting. He had just finished filming that movie. So he didn't have to follow that rule anymore. They had already finished filming Giant. And as soon as
I was saying, like, if he didn't, but it was his last movie, right?
Yeah, because he died, Dave.
That was my question. I said, did he stop acting because he wanted to race, or did he stop acting because he died?
Maybe a combination. I think he went back to that.
He stopped acting because he was dead. Like, that's why he stopped acting.
I didn't
also
know,
stopped racing.
I didn't know if he quit acting before he died.
Right.
No.
No. I don't think so. But I know that since he was out of that contract, that's why he was back in the race car.
Right. And he had just wrapped on Giant. He was going to go do some racing. He probably would have went to do another movie. He probably would have gotten hit with that same clause that he wasn't allowed to race while filming. So he's probably going to do some racing before then because he was good at it. Like legitimately, you start looking at some of his results. He was winning races or coming in second. He was a legitimately good racer. And part of the crash is they just couldn't see each other on this highway. It's just like those long, deceptive highways where it's just so straight that you don't even know what you're looking at. And to go back to a different side episode that we did, Clyde Barrow, when he crashed, it's because, and Bonnie got injured, it's because you couldn't see what was ahead of you because everything is so straight that everything is deceptively like, it just like the road is deceptive. So they didn't see each other. It was too late. He tried to pull like this racing maneuver to avoid the crash and he just wasn't able to. He just didn't see it in time. And this guy Turnipseed, which sounds like the most made up name of all time, just, turn at the wrong time. There's a lot of woulda, shoulda, couldas. If he doesn't get that speeding ticket, he probably doesn't get into this car accident. There's a lot of debate about how fast he was going during the accident. It doesn't look like he was like people were saying he was going 95, 100 miles an hour. And based on the crash pattern and stuff like that, it doesn't look like that at all. It looks like he was going closer to the speed limit, still a little bit over it. But I mean, who are we to judge that?
You're in a Porsche 550 Spider, and you are on a highway that's so straight that the field of view is deceptive. There's no way he was going the speed limit.
Right. I mean, you're not going the speed limit in a 97 Honda Civic down that road. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but I don't think he was being like recklessly out of control from what I've read on the crash reports and stuff.
Just to settle this one for all, turnips do come from seeds.
I don't think anyone said they didn't. It just sounded like a fake name.
Yeah. It's just like if you went to like give a name and you didn't want to give your real name. It's like, my name's Jeff Turnipseed. But yeah, so like that's the story of the crash. And then everything that happens afterwards, with the exception of the stuff with the mechanic, happens within 4 to 5 years. because the car disappears in 1960. The crash is in 1955. Car disappears in 1960. So there's a 5-year span of just like death surrounding this car.
The car disappearing was the strangest turn in the story. I understand if it was like, okay, this is just going to make it seem more mysterious. It also, maybe they're like, all right, this thing has killed enough people. Let's hide it. So people aren't tempted to buy parts from it and die as well. Maybe it was like a Busby's chair situation where they're like, all right, hang this thing up on a wall so no one sits in it again. And
except they didn't sell off all the parts to Busby's chair.
True.
Yeah, the thing that I was reading about the guy who took the car and boasted that he was going to restore it to its former glory and all that stuff. Apparently he was like a celebrity car guy like that restored cars, and he was really known to like try to get himself in the limelight. And
was it Exhibit?
It feels like it was Exhibit. But he was like
this car.
He was a big showman, so like they think that he actually just it didn't actually disappear. He knows what happened to it, and he did it just to like continue the lore of the car.
I put a microwave oven in James Dean's car, dog.
So unfortunately he's passed away, so now we don't know, and he never said that he knew what happened to it, so like that's just a mystery we're probably never gonna uncover unless he left some specifics to people close to him.
I would question the origins of the random piece that they found in a box in Massachusetts and be like, all right, well, tell me where that came from. Who found this box? Where was the box located? And where are the other pieces? Because obviously somebody knows something.
How do they authenticate that?
They went to Porsche, and Porsche was able to look at a serial number or something on it, and Porsche was able to produce a letter of authenticity that it was definitely the transaxle that was on James Dean's car.
Maybe there was some of James Dean on it. Boom.
Tried so hard not to laugh.
So just moving on after the crash of James Dean, the fact that what is going through a race car driver's head? He's like, I need to buy this engine out of this car.
It's a clout thing. It's a moneymaker thing. It's you're the guy that's driving James Dean's car, sort of.
Yeah, I guess
that's your gimmick.
Yeah. So he puts
now
the
you're
engine.
Dead. Are you happy? Was it a good gimmick? Because
Well,
he died.
He's the one that lived. He's the one that crashed but lived. He sold the suspension parts to another racer that somehow hit the only tree anywhere close to the race course,
that's what's crazy. Yeah.
I mean, he could have got spun out or something. Like, I don't know exactly what happened, but
there's no way he didn't climb out of that wreck. Like, you've got to be kidding me.
Right.
I hit the only one.
Well, he died, so he didn't climb out of the wreck. But
I'm so confused on which guy died and which guy didn't. Okay, so guy who bought the suspension.
The guy who bought the whole car
with
he put the engine in his car. He crashed, but he lived. He then sold some of those parts, the suspension parts, to, I think it was Travis Lee McHenry or something like that. Trevor Lee McHenry, something close to that. And what ended up happening there is he crashed, and I think it was in the first lap, and he died.
Sorry, I got distracted by my wife showing up in the middle of that, as you can see on the YouTube stream. Okay, so just a recap there, because I heard none of that. Guy who bought suspension died?
Yeah, guy who bought the whole car sold the suspension to another guy in the same race as him, and the guy with the suspension died.
Okay, and the guy that bought the suspension was the one that hit the only tree.
Right.
Okay.
On the first lap, I'm pretty positive on that.
That's brutal.
It's crazy. So then
it must have been much more dangerous back in the day, racing, as it is today. I mean, obviously there's still a few deaths here and there, but it seems like if the movie studio was like, no, then it was that much of a high risk.
Yeah, and especially in these smaller races that weren't like nationally known. I think James Dean's dream, if I recall properly, was to race in like the Indy 500 or one of those big races. Like, that's what he wanted to do. That was like his goal, was to get into that. So he was doing smaller races just to build himself up through the ranks. So that's what probably some of these, I mean, but you're racing Porsches too. So it's not like they're racing, little shit cars. These guys are racing like heavy duty cars at this point in time. So then it goes from him to the guy that buys it to quote unquote restore it, puts it in storage for a little bit. It just randomly catches on fire. Very Houdini like, where just the only thing in the storage area that catches on fire and nothing else catches on fire, and it's almost like a controlled burn.
Makes me wonder if it was an active arson, maybe.
Right. Is it? But I don't think the legend was going there. So like, I would say maybe it's the guy trying to hype the legend a little bit.
Those are the two things that I think of, is either some asshole just being like, oh, I heard James Dean's car's in there, let's break in and burn it.
Right.
Or it was him trying to add superstition around it, but destroying your own product that you probably paid a lot of money for probably wasn't the greatest of ideas.
Yeah. And then he decides to sell the 2 tires. And it's just like, I understand that he's running a business and stuff, but if you're restoring that car, wouldn't you want as much of the original stuff as you could? And I'd rather just have the tires for display or something.
I guess at that point, if the other 2 burned, then you might as well sell off those, because you probably got to buy a whole new set anyways.
I heard he was gonna go out and replace the whole new set, but he was too tired.
Nice, Dave. Good job. Keep it going.
It's the energy we bring to these Cursed Possessions episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So he styles those tires.
We really do.
Oh my god. This is what it's come to. So the guy buys them. He's driving down the road. He's happy as James Dean's tires. And they both blow out at the same time, which is, next level crazy. And that guy dies.
Are we sure it's not common for multiple tires to blow out at once?
I mean, I would assume not. I mean, I've never had like succession of tires blow out on me. Have you?
No, but I guess if like one blows and then the car starts spinning and rips the other one apart, maybe.
I did once, but that's because I hit a curb and both of them popped at the same time.
That's not the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not.
That's not a
direct
out.
reason.
Oh, I guess. It's not a blowout. Is it a blowout? Is that considered a blowout, or you just hit a curb?
That was kind of an accident, I guess. I got ran off the road. It's a crazy story. Not that crazy. I got sort of ran off the road. I had assumed that a guy was falling asleep in front of me. So there was I'm behind a car and we're both supposed to take a left. And it's like the middle of the night. I'm coming home from work and he's just not going. I'm like, all right, screw it. I'm just going to go around him. So I start going around him to take the left. And then he starts going forward, so I didn't hit him. I had to keep going and I ended up just destroying the curb and he drives off. And the worst part is it looked just like same color, same make Toyota Tundra pickup truck as my brother-in-law's vehicle. And I was like, you son of a... I know it wasn't him because he had left work hours before, but I was like, I think Nick just read me off the road. I think he's trying to kill me. Yeah, but blew up both the tires.
That sucks.
Terrible. But that's obviously not the same circumstance of them both popping at the same time.
Right.
It is rare. I mean, it's got to be rare. That makes it sound like a curse. That's what makes it sound, because there's no way they have the same wear and tear, because obviously where your tires are aligned on your vehicle, they're all getting different wear and tear at different times, and that's why sometimes you just got to replace one tire. But yeah, very unlikely unless you ran over something.
Yeah. So then this guy decides to just, all right, well, we'll just display the car. I'll just, rent it out, whatever he did. I don't know if it was like a charity thing or it's like all these safety meetings car safety expos, just send them out. And the thing would just keep falling off of its display.
Yep.
Just keep falling off. So it breaks the hip of a person that's just like looking at the car. Boom, breaks that guy's hip. And then the guy that's transporting it all over, it falls on him and kills him. Which is,
it's hard to argue against the idea that it's cursed.
Especially at that point, because at this stage in the story, I thought it was done. And then it just kept, even when the car is not even drivable anymore, it's just a heap of burnt metal. It's just rolling over and just killing people. It's like that's crazy. That's like a serial killer at his funeral, and like his corpse is just rolling over people, still killing people. Like, God, he won't stop. Put him on the ground.
Yeah.
Isn't there a horror movie about a haunted couch?
There's
probably
There's a horror movie about a haunted tire.
That's yeah. Couch tire.
I think you're right too. Isn't that, you're not even lying right now, are you?
Oh,
There
no,
is a
there is.
haunted tire
Yeah.
movie.
No, that's a movie.
Yeah,
It's a-
I know. And that was basically what we're talking about right now. But
Right.
something tells me the horror movie is much more ridiculous.
Yeah, so I found all of the stuff around the car interesting, but then you talk about the mechanic, and that story is crazy because I mean, it's completely tied to the crash because his life absolutely changed after this. He's
Mhm.
with the biggest star in Hollywood, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. He's his mechanic. He's the one that's getting him ready for all these races, and then he's the one that suggests to him, "You need to drive this car. We're not going to tow it. You need to drive it to the races so that you can break it in, so that you get used to the car, so that the engine's ready." And James Dean dies.
Yeah.
And it's like, for a number of reasons, that can just send you down this like very terrible downward spiral of depression and alcoholism, because they were probably really good friends. First of all, they're around each other frequently enough. They're on some level of friendship. Otherwise, he's not going to be driving with them to the races, like in that type of capacity. Then you're the reason that this happened. I would blame myself. I told this guy to drive this car.
I do blame myself, and I've spiraled into alcoholism too. Definitely, it's because of that.
So I would blame myself for the death of James Dean if I was him. I mean, not really his fault, but you're going to put it on yourself. Like, I told him to drive this. I didn't take over at one point. And it was probably his meal ticket too. Like, not to sound gross about it, but this guy was probably on retainer by James Dean or something to be the one to take care of all of his cars.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So now, like, everything's gone wrong. So now he starts going through marriage after marriage, trying to kill himself. He's not able to kill himself. And then he's just on his fourth marriage, for whatever reason, after failing to kill himself, he tries to kill himself. He's unsuccessful. His next go-to is to murder his wife. And he just stabs her to death.
And then doesn't get charged with murder.
And then doesn't even get charged with manslaughter. Gets charged with attempted manslaughter.
It's like, no, it wasn't an attempt.
No, she's dead.
Yeah, it's like, murder.
It's.
And how do you get attempted manslaughter when the person died? It's like it was
the whole. Not to go
manslaughter.
off on a side tangent here, but attempted manslaughter. Why is that a thing? Because manslaughter means you didn't intend to kill them. So how can you attempt to attempted? It doesn't make sense.
I attempted to not kill the accident. It doesn't make any sense. That's actually crazy.
It was so, like, I'm just reading and they're like, yeah, he was only in and he wasn't even in jail. He was in like a mental institution for a few years. It's like, what? Like,
and one hell of a lawyer. One hell of a lawyer.
I guess, man. I know that he worked on Porsches and stuff. I think he ended up going back to Germany. His name was Rolf or something like that. And
all the Rolfs end up back in Germany.
Yes. So, and then he just ends up drinking one night in 1981, I believe it was. I said it in the episode, and putting his car into a building. Or I think it was actually a residence, just driving into a residence, destroying his car and killing himself in the process and dying much like James Dean did. And I wouldn't be shocked if it was on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to kill himself a whole bunch of times, so that obviously would not surprise me as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the last documented anything for.
Did the car roll over?
Oh, no.
They're not going to get any better than this. We might as well end it. That was the curse of James Dean. Curse of his car.
Right, the curse of the little bastard. That's the name of the car, was the little bastard, which is an interesting name for the car. Like,
was that the original name? Was that what he called it, or was that
what he
ended up referencing it? Because it really ended up behaving like a little bastard, didn't it?
A little rascal. Yeah,
that's what James Dean called it. He named it the little bastard. I mean, even going back to before anything happened, though, he had that actor friend that told him not to drive the car. He's like, I told him not to drive the car. He would be found dead in a week in it. And he was found dead in a week in it, which is,
That sounds like the curse.
like that's spooky as well. So
Mm.
I don't know. You guys said that you hadn't heard of this. Do you have any impressions from hearing this story?
Hard to argue that it's not cursed
Yeah.
after everything that we just heard, and the fact that it kept going. So if there was people died, this takes me back to the last one where it's like, all right, the common denominator with the cursed chair was everyone was drunk driving home. The common denominator at first with this one was it was a bunch of race car drivers doing an extremely dangerous hobby or job, right?
Mhm.
But then it kept going, and that's where it sells me on it could be a cursed item because of all the other deaths that had nothing to do with racing whatsoever.
Right.
What I liked about this one too is I like all of our cursed possession episodes, but I ran into this with even the Hope Diamond. I think you did with the chair a little bit, and on your Shams episode as well, Dave. Like, you have these stories and you can confirm some of them, but not everything is documented. And on this one, there was only one particular one that I couldn't find documented, which is the tires one.
Right.
So,
That makes it much more valid for sure.
And even if you remove that tires one, I still think you have enough there, more than enough there,
for sure,
to classify it as a cursed possession. So it's missing though, and all we have left is that transaxle. So
yeah, I think we're unanimous in saying that something's up.
I agree. So I thought this was a fun one.
I liked it. I did look to see if Dale Earnhardt's car is also cursed, and no, nothing there.
Nothing on that one. Nothing on that one. Well, that was the story of James Dean's car. So that was very nicely done. And yeah, we'll be back on Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we are every single week for a brand new live episode of Hometown Ghost Stories. Make sure you tune in. And if you haven't already, drop a little 5-star review on iTunes, and we'll read it out at the end of the show. Shout out to all of our Patreons, and we will see you guys on Tuesday.
Peace.
Later.